Welcome back. This is Equivalent Expressions Part 2. If you haven't watched Part 1, please pause. Please watch Part 1 first, otherwise this won't make as much sense. So watch Part 1, then come back. This video is going to be focusing on the second IXL code for this week, identifying equivalent linear expressions 6-2A. As a reminder, I will be averaging your scores together, so do your best on both of these skills. Here are two examples of the type of problems that you're going to be completing on IXL. I am considering both of these level 1 problems because they are the easiest type of problems that you will see. However, they are slightly different. The first one is asking which expression is equivalent to 5f plus 4f. Here we have 4 different options, and only one of them is going to be correct. These type of problems are really testing, do you know what it means to have equivalent expressions? 5f plus 4f is obviously going to be 9f, so the second one is going to be our answer. However, it is important to also understand why the other ones were options. What were they trying to do to trick us? So for example, let's look at the bottom one, 3f plus 7f. If you were going a little too fast, you might have said, yes, that's the same thing as 9f, but it's obviously wrong. Same thing for the first one. This one might have been meant to trick someone who didn't understand what an f by itself means. And then the third option, it does have a 9 similar to the f before it, but that's an exponent, and that's not how exponents work. We can't just put the number in front, the coefficient, and make it into an exponent. So that's why this one is obviously wrong. For the second problem, you notice how we have these little check marks right here? What this means is that we could actually have more than one possible correct answer. For this problem, we're being asked to select which of these expressions are equivalent to 9 parentheses q plus 4 close parentheses. There's two ways that you could think about this problem. The first way is just simplify it and see what you get. So let's do that one first. If we were to simplify this, we would have to distribute the 9, so that would be 9 times q and 9 times 4. This would give us an answer of 9q plus 36. And we notice that this is one of our answer choices. So we know that this answer is correct. But there might be other ones that are also correct. Which brings me to the second way that you could think about this problem. Part of what this lesson is meant to teach you is to notice the differences in the way an expression is written, but also realize that even though it's written differently, it's still the same thing. So for example, this first option, we have q plus 4 inside parentheses, and then the 9 is at the end. The main difference between this option and our original problem is that the 9 was at the front of the parentheses, and now here it's at the back of the parentheses. But it doesn't matter, because whenever you have a number next to a parentheses like that, all it means is multiplication. This one is also correct, because if you were to distribute the 9 with everything inside the parentheses, you would get the exact same answer. So there is more than one possible correct answer. Let's look at number 3, 36q plus 9. Well, that looks similar to our answer up here, but it's obviously wrong. The 9 should be with the variable, not the 36. So this one is definitely wrong. And then the last one says 9 parentheses 4 plus q. This looks very similar to our original problem. In the original problem, we had q plus 4, but this time we have 4 plus q. And in this case, that change in order does not matter. Our answer should still be the same thing. And we could also prove it. If we were to simplify this final answer choice, we have 9 times 4, which is 36, and 9 times q, which is a positive 9q. So this is 36 plus 9q. Our answer was 9q plus 36. It's the same thing. It's just swapped, but it means the same thing. So for this problem, option 1, 2, and 4 are all correct. In order to get this question correct, you need to select all three options. Now it's your turn to give this a shot. You have 1 minute to answer both of these questions. Because you have the check marks, it means that you can have more than one correct answer. So please do not forget about that. You have 1 minute. Your time starts now. That was 1 minute. Let's go ahead and review. For this first problem, we're being asked to identify which of these expressions is equivalent to 3g plus 9g. 3g plus 9g, we know that that is equal to 12g, but we don't see 12g as one of the answer choices. So let's look at them one by one. The first one says 4g plus 4g plus 4g. Well, they all have the same variable, which means that they are like terms, so we could combine them. 4g plus 4g plus 4g is equal to 12g. So this one is a correct answer. For this next part, we have 2g plus g plus 9g. So there's something special about this middle one right here, that g. You need to remember that it has an invisible 1. So when you add all this up together, it should be equal to 12g. It was there to trick you because if you forgot that this had an invisible 1, you might have thought that it was a 0. You might have thought it was 2 plus 0 plus 9, which is 11g. And if you did that, your answer would have been wrong. It would have not been 12g. But remember, there is an invisible 1. This does equal to 12g, so this is correct. Third option, we have g plus 12. Is that equal to 12g? No. That's not how you add like terms. G plus 12 is not 12g. That is a common mistake. It's there to trick you. This is not correct. And then the last one, 11g plus 2g is equal to 13g. That one is just straight up wrong. This is not correct. So the correct answers are going to be the first and second option for this problem. Now let's focus on number 2. We're going to start off by simplifying this option right here. We have 4 on the outside, which means that we're going to go ahead and distribute that 4. So 4 times negative 6b is going to be a negative 24b. And 4 times a negative 4b, remember that the negative in front of that 4 is going to count as the sign. So it's 4 times negative 4, which is going to give us a negative 16. So negative 24b plus 16. Is that one of our answer choices? Yes. Here is the answer choice, and it is correct. That third option is correct. Now let's look at option number 1. We have negative 6b minus 16. Even though our correct answer over here, and the one that we're looking at, both have a negative 16, because we know it should be negative 24 and not negative 6, this one is just wrong. For the second option, we need to be careful. The main difference between this option and the original problem is that the negative was on the inside and they brought it to the outside. You see how this one had a negative 4 on the inside and then this one has a negative on the outside? So the question is, does that matter? Does that change your final answer? Let's check. Let's distribute that -4 with everything inside the parentheses. So -4 times -6b, well, that's going to give us a positive 24b. And then -4 times a positive 4 is going to be a -16. Is that the same thing as the one that we started with, as the question on top? No, it's not. This says it's a positive 24b when the answer should be a negative. So this is not correct. And then last but not least, at the end, we have -6b minus 4 parentheses 4. So the 4 is in the back, but in the original problem, the 4 was in the front. But like we talked about in the previous problem, where the 4 or the number outside the parentheses, as long as it's being multiplied, it doesn't matter if it's in the front or the back. It should give you the exact same answer. So this answer choice is correct. This is equivalent, it's the same as our option at the beginning. So that means that options 3 and 4 are both correct. This is what I would consider a level 2 type problem. It's similar in the thinking process, it's just going to be a little bit more work. And just like the previous problem, let's just go ahead and start off by simplifying the expression that we are given. So we are going to start off with this. We have 4 parentheses 2c plus 2 close parentheses plus 8. And just like before, we're going to simplify it by multiplying. We're going to distribute the 4 with everything inside of the parentheses. 4 times 2c gives us 8c. 4 times 2 is going to give us 8. But we still have this 8 from after the parentheses. We need to make sure that we also include that as part of our answer. The next thing that we want to ask ourselves is there anything that we can combine? Yes, in this case we can. Even though they all have 8, I could only combine these two at the end because they are like terms. They don't have any variables. I can't combine it with the 8c because that one has a variable. So if I simplify this, 8 plus 8 is equal to 16, and then we just bring the 8c from the problem. So we have 8c plus 16. Now let's look at our answer choices. The only one that looks similar to this answer choice is option 3, this one right here. However, our answer that we found says 8c, while this one says 16c. Even though it has the right numbers, it is not in the proper order. These are not equal to each other. So I'm just going to X it out. So none of these look like our answer, but let's go ahead and simplify them and see if we get a similar answer to what we found over here. For the first option, we're going to simplify this in a similar way to what we just did. We're going to start off by distributing the 2. So 2 times everything inside of the parentheses. In this case, this is going to give us an 8c plus 8, and then let's not forget the positive 8 at the end. And without having to do any more work, we can see that this answer is the same thing as the semi-final step in the previous problem. And because of that, we know that these should be equal to each other. Yes, we could simplify a little bit more and we would have had this as our final answer, but we don't need to. It's the same thing, which means that this first answer choice is correct. To simplify the second option, we're going to talk about something a little different. We're not going to start off with distribution because there's actually something else that we can do. You need to remember that whenever we're thinking about simplifying, we are really just talking about the order of operations. So I'm going to write down GEMDAS right here. PEMDAS, GEMDAS, you might have learned it different ways, but this is the way that I've been talking about it in class. So now let's go through the order of operations and talk about that second option. So the G. G stands for grouping. Grouping in this case is just parentheses, and we do have parentheses for the second option. It's right here. So now we have to ask ourselves, can we simplify anything inside of the parentheses? And in this case, yes we can, because we have 2c and 2c. They are like terms because they have the same variable. I can't combine the 4 because again, that one doesn't have the same variable. It is not a like term.
When we combine 2c plus 2c, this is going to give us 4c. So let's go ahead and rewrite our new problem over here. We have two parentheses. Instead of writing 2c plus 2c, we're going to write down 4c. We're going to bring down the 4 that's right here, and then close the parentheses and put the 8 at the end. So now that we're done with grouping, we just go down through the order of operations. But in this case, we could actually just stop. Look at the answer that we just got. 2 parentheses 4c plus 4 close parentheses plus 8. That is the exact same thing as option number 1. So what that means is that these two are also equal to each other. If the second option is equal to the first option, and the first option is equal to our original problem, then all of these, even though they are written differently, are equal to each other. So I'm going to put a check mark here. That one is correct. And now let's look at the fourth option. Similarly, we're going to look at the order of operations. We're going to start off with grouping. We see some parentheses here, so we do have grouping, and we can combine the variables, c plus c. C plus c is 2c, which means that once we simplify that, this becomes 4 parentheses 2c plus 2 close parentheses plus 8. And what we just found is exactly the same as our original problem, which means that these have to be equal to each other. We don't need to simplify all the way. We know that they're equal at this step right now. So option number 4 is correct. In order to get this problem correct, you need to have selected all 3 of those options, the first, second, and fourth one.
Here is an example of a level 3 type question. Like before, we're going to go ahead and simplify what they gave us, but I want to talk to you about how to do this using the order of operations, since we didn't fully talk about that before. So according to the order of operations, we're going to start off with grouping. So let's go ahead and check that. We do have grouping here. We have parentheses and parentheses. So now let's check inside of the parentheses. Can we simplify anything inside? 6u and -1? No, we can't do anything with that because they are not like terms. This has a variable and the other one does not. Same thing for 2u and -6. One has a variable and the other one does not. So we can't use grouping. There's nothing there. E stands for exponents. There's no exponents, so let's go ahead and skip that. Multiplication. Yes, we can multiply here. It might be a little hard to see, but remember, whenever you have parentheses, there is technically always a number on the outside. For this first set of parentheses where you have 6u minus 1, there is technically an invisible 1 in front. It's like saying 1 times everything inside the parentheses. And the same is going to be true here. We have a -1 times 2u minus 6. So let's go ahead and work out that multiplication. For this first section, none of it is going to change because 1 times anything is going to stay the same. 1 times 6u is just 6u, and 1 times -1 is just -1. Again, nothing really changed inside the parentheses. But for the second one, it is going to change. -1 times 2u and -1 times -6. Well, -1 times 2u is going to be a -2u. And -1 times -6 is going to give us a +6. The next thing that we need to ask ourselves is, can we simplify this anymore? Well, according to the order of operations, we're done with multiplication. We're not done with division, but there is no division. And then the last step is addition and subtraction. Is there anything to add or subtract here? Can we combine like terms? Yes, we can. We have 6u and a -2u. Which when we combine those together is going to give us a +4u. And we also have a -1 and a +6. -1 and +6 are going to give us a +5. So when we simplify the original problem, 4u plus 5 is the final answer. The closest thing to this answer is option number 3, but the order is off. Here we have a 5u, here we have a 4u, so they're not the same. This one is absolutely wrong. It's close, but it's wrong. Now let's check the first option, 4u plus 6 minus 1. It doesn't look like our final answer, but let's go ahead and simplify. Here we can simplify positive 6 and negative 1 because they don't have any variables. If we combine both of those, we get a positive 5, and then we still have the 4u from the original problem. So we have 4u plus 5, which is correct. It is the same as what we found earlier. So this one works. For the second option, instead of working it out, I want to talk to you about the differences between the original problem and the second option. So let me erase this first. Okay, now if you look at this original problem and the option that we're looking at right here, what are the differences that you notice? Well, the obvious difference is going to be inside of the second parentheses, 2u minus 6 and negative 6u plus 2. Are they the same thing? If they mean the same thing, if they are the same thing, then when we simplify them, it should also be equal. But in this case, if you started off with 2u and then you get a negative 6u, those aren't the same. Your answer is not going to be the same. These two are not equal to each other. And because of that reason, this is not correct. And now let's analyze the fourth option. Let's go ahead and get rid of all of this. Now compare the last option with the original problem. If you look closely, you'll notice that the 6u minus 1 is kind of flipped. The 6u is in the back for this one, it's at the end, and then the negative 1 is at the front. And for the second set of parentheses, it's a similar situation. 2u minus 6 becomes negative 6 plus 2u. So the question is, are these the same thing? Yes, they are. The reason that they are the same thing is that even though they are switched, they still represent the same value. So for example, the 6u right here, it's a positive 6u. And even though we moved it to the back, it's still a positive 6u. Same thing with the negative 1. It says minus 1, but when we move it to the front of the parentheses, it should still be a negative number, a negative 1. When we look at the blue part, the second parentheses, the same thing is true right here. We had a negative 6, which is still a negative 6, and a positive 2u, which is still a positive 2u. They are equal to each other. They are the same. Again, you could have done this the long way. You could have simplified it the way we did it up here, but you would have found the same answer. Instead of having to go through all those steps, it's easier to just look at what is different and ask yourself, even though it's a little different, is it the same? Does it represent the same thing? And in this case, yes, it does. So the first and fourth option are correct. This is a level 4 type question. I'm going to give you 1 minute to try it on your own, and then we'll talk about it together at the end. You have 1 minute. If you need more time, press pause and press play when you're ready to go. Your time starts now. Let's talk about this final question. This question only has one correct answer, and I'm going to start off by giving it to you. The correct answer for this problem is number 3. All other options are incorrect. Now let's talk about why. Let's start off with why the right answer is what it is. There's two ways you could have done this. For all of these problems, you could have actually simplified all of them and seen if it's equal to our original problem. The original problem, when simplified, should have given you an answer of 7a plus 13. The only one that does that is option 3. But we didn't have to simplify all of them. We could have just looked at them as well. If you feel comfortable doing that, you can do that. I would recommend that you simplify when possible, but sometimes it's easier to just look at the problem. The difference between the original problem and option number 3 is that the negative 3 and the 4 are at the back of the problem instead of at the front of the parentheses like they are over here. Again, they still mean multiplication, so technically it doesn't matter if it's at the end of the parentheses or at the beginning. They're still equal to each other. So that's why number 3 is correct. When you look at the other options, the differences are differences that are not legal in math. They are not equal to each other because those changes change the problem completely. So for example, for the first option, the negative 3 and the 7a are swapped here, kind of. Well, it's the numbers in the front essentially. And then the same thing here in the back. We have a 7 and a negative 2, or 7a and negative 2, and they're swapped for a negative 2a and the 7. Those type of changes are not equal. They're not going to be the same. The value has completely changed. So because of that, option 1 is not correct. And actually, for similar reasons, all the other two options are also not correct. There are things that you can change and swap that are the same, but in this case, the only one that does it correctly is the third one. That's it. Congratulations, you finally reached the end. Again, here are your IXL codes for these lessons. If you have any questions, if you're not sure how to do these type of problems that we just reviewed, please send me a message on Remind. Again, I will be averaging your scores based on the table below. So if you have any questions, please let me know so you could earn the highest possible grade. With that, have a good rest of your day and take care, everyone. Bye.